Well, good evening, everyone. I'm joining you tonight from Raworth country. Unfortunately, my co-author, Professor Ryan Daniel, is unable to present tonight, although we have worked on this model together. Much of the thinking I'll be presenting emerges from lived experience. So to provide some context, I'm a Sydney-based PhD candidate studying externally with James Cook University, 2,000 kilometres north in Townsville. For my thesis, I'm researching the natio-cultural distinction of Australian popular music and the careers of contemporary singers in Australia. My husband Tim is a professional singer and singing teacher, and for the past 17 years, I have worked as a piano teacher. In 2013, together we founded what by 2020 was a large and thriving singing academy here in Sydney. However, like all of you, we had no idea how much life was about to change. In short, everything fell apart. As it turns out, singing schools and pandemics don't mix. Although we were able to move much of our teaching online, March 2020 marked the beginning of the end of our business and the mission we had poured so much of ourselves into. For us and our 3 young sons, it has become painfully clear that these things will never go back to what they were and will never become what they might have been. But our story is hardly unique. We are just 2 of thousands, if not millions of musicians around the world whose already challenging work life has been permanently altered by the pandemic. Prior to COVID, a wealth of research had already demonstrated that musicians' lives are characterised by precarity and instability, and that the well-being of musicians can be negatively impacted as a result. We all know that individual musicians and music organisations have been devastated by the pandemic. However, there is an argument that COVID merely hastened the inevitable in what was already a precarious field of work. What is clear is the need for us to learn from the past to create a viable future. One silver lining of COVID, perhaps, is that these conversations have moved into the mainstream and are now had with a greater sense of urgency. As we begin the task of rebuilding the sector, we have an opportunity to rebuild a more equitable, sustainable and kind industry. My co-author Ryan and I believe that our proposed Creative Sector Biomes Model offers a new way to conceptualise music careers for the future. Within the creativity studies literature, the standard definition of creativity is that it is a product or process that is both novel and appropriate. Noting that creativity exists in a wide variety of contexts and at different levels of expertise, many authors acknowledge a distinction between little c or everyday creativity and big C or eminent creativity. Kaufman and Beghetto offer a more nuanced division with their 4Cs model, which acknowledges that different degrees of ability and experience can result in vastly different levels of impact. All 4 types of creativity are important, though in tertiary education, there is naturally a focus on producing graduates who operate at the Pro C and hopefully the Big C level. Implicit in this model is the understanding that it is people at the Pro and Big C levels who draw an income from their creative work. Csikszentmihalyi's systems model further develops our understanding of creativity. He argued that creativity takes place in the context of a system comprising the domain, the field, and the person. That is, the person works within the boundaries of the domain to produce an idea or product, which is subsequently affirmed or rejected as creative by the field, who are the gatekeepers of the domain. In searching for new ways to reconceptualize the creative careers of the people and the dynamics within systems of creativity, and in line with the established use of ecological metaphors to represent the art sector, as we've already seen tonight, we have developed the Creative Sector Biomes Model. It is our hope that this model offers a metaphor that opens new approaches to teaching and researching music careers. The biosphere is the collection of biomes that cover the Earth's surface, which each share similar characteristics in terms of temperature and rainfall, resulting in similarities in vegetation types. Biome categories include tundra, forest, grassland, aquatic, and desert. The creative sector biosphere can therefore be imagined as a collection of distinct creative sector biomes, each one representing the various ecosystems of a specific art form, such as music, drama, dance, visual arts, literature, and so on. As well as biomes, there are different biogeographic realms. These follow geographical boundaries such as continents and are characterised by unique and distinct fauna. Similarly, we can conceptualise each art form as having broad style categories such as classical, popular, world and utility, which make up the creative biogeographic realms. Within each biogeographic realm, there are also different bioregions. These represent a further subdivision according to geographical features or climate zones. For example, the Great Plains of the US are part of the grasslands biome, but are divided into North, South, and Central bioregions. This concept of bioregions maps to different genres in the arts, many of which can be found in multiple art forms, such as Impressionism or hip hop. Bioregions are then divided into ecoregions, which we can understand to represent regionally organised manifestations of genre, such as Oz rock, Britpop, or Adelaide hip hop. This aligns with what some authors would call music scenes. Finally, we come to the smallest division, the ecosystem. In our model, this is where creativity is generated across all levels of the 4 Cs. In an ecosystem, there are biotic and abiotic factors. Each ecosystem is a unique mix of plants, animals, geography, and climate, just as each musical ecosystem is unique. The biotic factors are the living components of the ecosystem and include the producers, the plants, the consumers, the animals, as well as the decomposers, which are the microorganisms and invertebrates. We can imagine that the plants represent the domain and their fruit symbolises the creative products that emerge from the domain, in our case, songs and pieces in recorded, live and notated formats. The animals represent the field, who are the consumers of the creative products, and the microorganisms and invertebrates represent the creators in the system, the musicians. It is the microorganisms and invertebrates that help transform dead creative fruit into new creative products by returning its nutrients to the system. Do try to ignore the fact that in this model, the musicians are the decomposers. It just invites too many terrible puns. The abiotic factors are the non-living parts of an ecosystem, such as temperature, water, air, and earth or soil. This is where it gets fun. The systems model of creativity only considers the biotic factors, the living things. However, the abiotic factors have a huge influence on the productivity and health of all the living parts of the system, and the system is at the mercy of these factors. That's precisely what climate change is teaching the world right now. In a creative ecosystem, we propose that the abiotic factors include the external stakeholders, symbolised by the sun or temperature, the internal philosophy of creators, symbolised by water, change catalysts, represented by air, and the operational foundations of the system, represented by earth or soil. For us to move forward with rebuilding COVID-ravaged musical ecosystems, we need to account for these abiotic factors in our model and construct management tools that enable us to restore a healthy balance and to cultivate an environment that is conducive to the production of creative fruit. To support creative ecosystem management, we therefore propose 4 tools, one for each abiotic factor. External stakeholders can be managed through Raworth's doughnut economics model. This model stresses the importance of living within what Raworth calls the safe and just space for humanity, which she explains can be achieved through regenerative and redistributive economic models. A key focus of doughnut economics is prioritising social value over financial profits, which the arts is well placed to offer. Internal philosophies can be managed through Alt-C or alternative creativity, which we have further outlined in a paper that is currently under review. Alternative creativity is a meta-creativity, the creativity of being creative. It's about helping musicians to find new ways to realise their creative identities and to develop creative careers while also positioning them to satisfactorily fulfil their human needs as per Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Change catalysts can be managed through the principles of shalom ethics, which will be further explained in a later paper. Shalom ethics is a set of principles for nurturing the arts that guides the ecosystem away from unsustainability and chaos towards healthy and high-quality manifestations of creativity that are expressed through an appropriate platform matched to the needs and ability of the performer. The operational foundations of the music ecosystem can be strengthened through Banks' ideas of creative justice. Namely, Banks identifies the three components of creative justice as objective respect, parity of participation, and reduction of harms. Our model invites some intriguing and at times uncomfortable questions. This model and the four management tools therefore offer some important implications for those of us who train the next generation of Pro C and Big C musicians.
10 minutes.
The management tool of doughnut economics invites us to consider the role and impact of capitalism in the creative sector biosphere. While we need to engage in some degree of farming, fishing, and forestry for survival, the world is now critically aware of the very real risks of excessive and mismanaged exploitation of ecosystems, as well as the resulting social impacts and inequities. Perhaps music is the same. Maybe our hyper-capitalist approach to music creation, especially in popular music, has done more damage than we realise. Maybe the promise of perpetual growth and the so-called democratization of music simply results in an increasingly unequal division of income amongst musicians. We see music turned into a utility, streamed on demand for little or even no payment, just as David Bowie famously predicted. The results have been devastating for so many musicians who can no longer draw a livable income from their creative endeavours and who in many cases spend more money producing an album than they will ever gain from that creative endeavour. As researchers and educators, how can we support our students to move towards a regenerative and redistributive music economy? Through the management tool of Alt-C, the Creative Sector Biomes Model provides a framework for discussions about musical identities and careers for musicians in training. It is important to avoid selling education through irresponsible dream merchanting, the promise of careers that are unlikely to eventuate, and instead to normalise music careers that comprise multiple income streams, even from outside the arts, and to explore creative practice beyond traditional pathways. We cannot underestimate the profound impact on musicians and their families of ongoing financial insecurity and the psychological impacts that can come with unrealised potential. Therefore, how can we guide our students to discover a place for their music, but also position them for an acceptable level of financial security and positive well-being? The management tool of Shalom ethics helps the industry to begin to determine and articulate acceptable ethical standards and to consider how we can improve the long-term sustainability of the music industry in Australia. It is arguably unrealistic to simply equip tertiary music students with training in arts entrepreneurship and expect them to thrive. While this is important and useful, at some point, and perhaps in some ecosystems, we are already at this point, there will be more aspiring professional musicians than there is music-related work available. What do we do with this growing number of excess musicians? Do we just tell them to try harder to book gigs, to work for less income, to be more entrepreneurial? Should they couch surf well into their 20s, 30s, or even 40s because surely their big break is just around the corner? Do we perpetuate a culture where life milestones are delayed or abandoned in the pursuit of music careers that may never happen? How can we use our roles as educators to support students in working towards enduring creativity and careers that are viable for the long term? The management tool of creative justice offers an accountability framework, particularly in the distribution of arts funding. By acknowledging the inherent value of creative products, we can start to measure the value of music beyond economic returns. In working towards parity of participation, perhaps our funding models need to ensure investment is made where it can do the most good for the most people, instead of propping up ailing genres or supporting models of education and practice that no longer achieve the desired outcomes or that even perpetuate creative injustice. Maybe we need to question whether offering access to the arts for some audiences actually comes at the cost of offering that same experience to others. And maybe we need to consider the harms that current practices within the arts might be causing. How can we embed the principles of creative justice into our daily operations and decision-making as educators? It is our great hope that this model will facilitate conversations which, while not easy, will eventually lead to thriving music ecosystems, both in Australia and around the world. We believe that it is the right of all people to experience the life-changing power of music, regardless of their geographic location or socioeconomic status. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lauren. That was really insightful. Well done. That was uh, a lot to chew on. I think we're going to have a lot of people that are do we have any? Yeah, we've got Margaret Barrett, profound provocations. Lauren, thank you. That was great. I have a question, but does anyone have any questions for Lauren at all? I'll just check to see if we've got any. Oh, we have two hands up, and I'll just have a look there. We have one hand up. We have no hands up. Someone's taken their hands down. Excellent. Excellent. I feel like I'm lecturing again. Okay, so Lauren, there's a lot of models in the whole biomes model overall, and you've drawn on a lot of concepts and theories, and I think that's fantastic. How did you get that inspiration? I'm just only asking because I just think if I just took one day to have a look in your brain, I think I'd have to run away and go, this lady has too much going on in her head for me. It's just extraordinary. How did you come across all of that? What was the initial inspiration?
Well, I suppose that I have the luxury as a PhD student of not having the teaching load that many of you will have, and the Sydney lockdown gave me lots of thinking time as well. Um, it's also, I guess, a conversation I've been having with my husband for many years. It hasn't been an easy journey for us. It's been a wonderful journey, but not easy. And also the conversations that I've had with Ryan, it's fascinating given our very different experiences of the music ecosystem in Australia, particularly my experiences in Sydney versus his in North and Far North Queensland, have provoked a lot of different ideas. And I guess I've also just tried to take the time, again, I have this indulgence as a PhD student to just sit and meditate and pray about these things, and to think about the kind of industry that I would like to create for the students who I teach.
That's brilliant. No, that's fantastic. I was really interested in the whole, sun, water, etc., etc. Do you feel like that there's any one dominant philosophy amongst all of this?
I think they're all equally important, but I think that Alt C has the biggest um, possibility in terms of helping everyday musicians, because we need to help people understand the reality that there probably won't be a full-time singer, that they will need to work in other industries, but that they have the opportunity to cultivate what one author, I can't remember who, calls slash work. It's beyond portfolio work. It's slash work is working across lots of different industries, and I do some of that myself. I work in corporate communications and copywriting as well as in music, and historically those things, I guess, have been something of a source of shame that we couldn't make a full-time income. But I think we need to reframe that and help people to see it's just part of who we are. Um, and and I think Alt-C can really help with that. And I hope our paper is accepted soon so that we can share that with you all.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Lauren. I'll stop it there because we're running behind. I'll just read out some of the comments. Pam says a multiplicity under metamorphosis in your creative ecosystem model. Can you add some of your references to the chat so we can read further, please? Congratulations, Lauren. And Pam also adds, I would like to feature a summary of your model in a new publication, 2022, the Routledge Companion to Creativities in Music Education. Can you direct us to your publications, please? So high compliment indeed. And Carlin Love, I love the implicit and overt commitment to justice in your model. I anxiously await more on the creativity and shalom and the inclusiveness it strives for. So yeah, well done. That was really just a delight to listen to. So thank you. And this was your first presentation?
At my first conference. It's been tricky to attend conferences as an HDR student in the pandemic because they just haven't happened, and
yeah,
so it's wonderful to be here.
Well, you've set the bar high, so well done. Done. Great.